Hey, hi, how you doing? This is the Gamertron, and welcome back to the Gamertron Show. So, I got together with a fellow YouTuber, Beard Grizzly, Destiny lore nerd extraordinaire. We got together to have a discussion about the recently released Destiny 2 Forsaken, and share our thoughts, feelings, and opinions on it, and comparing and asking questions from our different points of view, him being a Destiny veteran, and me being a Destiny noob, only being introduced to Destiny via the sequel. So if you like lengthy, podcast-like discussions on video games, well, here you go. And be sure to check out Beard Grizzly's channel, link in the description and in the comment section down below, and watch his side of the video if you are so inclined. So what do a Destiny veteran and a Destiny noob think of Destiny 2 Forsaken? Let's find out.
So yeah, like you and I have been playing the game for a good while now, or at least like off and on together. And I know for you, you've got the unique perspective. You've got the perspective that I don't. Because I've been playing Destiny since open beta, actually pretty well as closed beta. And going into it, of course, from the console, and then coming into it on PC, now with Destiny 2, just so on. But you have that unique perspective because you started with Destiny 2. And that was your first game.
Yep, first, Destiny virgin here.
Yeah.
I had to pop my cherry with the second one. I would have loved to play the first one, but I'm a prickly PC-only gamer. That's me. That's just my preferences. I know it's a hindrance to myself, but hey, saves me money for the wallet. But yeah.
I was going to say, it's like Bungie doesn't really like money to produce it for PC or something.
I wonder. But yeah, for me, I didn't have any, like, I don't mean to sound rude or condescending. I didn't have any biases going into Destiny 2. I wasn't like already nostalgic about the first game. So for me, Destiny 2, for me, it was like another sci-fi shooter. It wasn't something special to me. I didn't grow with it like with the first Destiny. So I understand why Destiny is a big deal to a lot of people. It really means something to a lot of people. But for me, it was just another AAA sci-fi shooter that was fun to play and visual marvel. That is something I will always praise Destiny 2 about. God, the game looks so beautiful.
Yeah, I'm going to say, if there's anything that I don't think anybody can really get on Destiny about, it's Bungie knows how to create a world at the very least. And even with Destiny 1, that's how it kind of felt like.
Now, this is something I want to ask you about. As a vet, you have your own unique perspective because, again, you grew with the first game. You saw the first game evolve and change, and then it evolve and change with the sequel. So I'm really curious when it comes to, let's start with something we can both agree on, we both really want to get into, and that's the campaign of Destiny 2 Forsaken. I'm very curious, as a vet, and you've experienced all the storytelling Destiny and Bungie have had to offer. So I'm curious, how does Forsaken compare to everything that's come before in terms of narrative? Is it better? Is it on par with something previous?
Yeah, that's a really tough call to really just say like one thing or the other. It is an improvement in a lot of ways towards, of course, what we had with Destiny 2. I think the main Red War campaign, and then evolving into Curse of Osiris, and then some of the obvious changes that they needed to make with Warmind before Forsaken, but after the debacle that was all the storytelling that happened with Destiny 2, they started to kind of get their heads out of their butts, and I think they started to do more with Warmind. For me, that's where it started to change as a whole. Forsaken, however, takes a lot of what we realized or knew from the previous game, really took it to the next level from like where Taken King was previously too. Taken King is probably the most comparable thing that I could say that Forsaken is. And even then, I feel like it is still leaps and bounds above that.
Oh, shit. Really?
Narratively, I still think that it has a better understanding of what a Destiny game wants to be. So, for instance, I'll take this as the example. If I look at what was added in the Taken King, there were some missions and side quests and everything that were added from a purely from like a weight standpoint, like what was added into the expansions. Taken King added one new area, along with the raid, which used a lot of assets from that area, and that was the Dreadnought. The Dreadnought was the major piece that really expanded what we had within Destiny's world. And really, it was a smaller place, a little bit more akin to Mercury. So the work that was done there, though still appreciated, and it really expanded the measure of the character that we see as Oryx, it didn't necessarily do a lot to expand the world. Now, that was originally what people were clamoring for and said that this is, the kind of stuff that we wanted to see from Destiny and how it was going to expand. We were also hoping that new worlds were going to be, of course, instituted into it. It never really happened. That was the silly part of it, is we never really got new worlds. We went from basically having Earth to Venus to Luna to Saturn with the Dreadnought. But those were the major things that we saw, and I know I'm forgetting a couple off the top of my head here. Destiny 2 Forsaken, however, adds in the Tangled Shore, and it adds in the Dreaming City. And both of these realms are larger than just about anything that the Dreadnought could have hoped to be. So from like a weight standpoint, it was there. From a narrative standpoint, however, everything is just so much different in terms of tone, what we saw. And what's still funny, though, is that the Taken King kind of ended in the same way. You know how by the end of Forsaken, it's just like the credits start rolling, or you've got the tagline for Destiny 2 right there. That's how Taken King ended.
Oh, okay.
And then it said that this is how everything is going to roll for the rest of the game. So they presented the main story, and then they opened up into, well, now we have to solve the other stuff that's going to happen around the system, because the Taken are now a major involvement within our Soul system. And the same thing is now kind of the case with the Scorn, with the Barons being able to come back, and then also with the Dreaming City as a whole, because even though that is an Awoken-heavy problem, that is still something that can very well come back on the rest of the Soul system. So long story short, I know I kind of drug this topic out, but I think it's important to emphasize Taken King was the expansion that everybody really compares this to. Forsaken is so far and above where Taken King was, it's not even funny.
Wow, okay, I was not expecting it. So this, Destiny 2 Forsaken, from your perspective as a veteran, this is some of the best, if not the best content, not just narrative-wise, but weight-wise, that Destiny has produced.
I would say, if I had to sum it up in a couple sentences, or at least one that I have also seen kind of around the community being used a lot, this is the best Destiny has ever been.
Shit! I have to say, that really blows my expectations out of the water, because again, as a noob, all I have to compare is base vanilla Destiny, Curse of Osiris, and Warmind. So for me, looking at it from a noob perspective, as a D2 only player, I've gotten used to Destiny just being, in terms of narrative, mediocre. I've always looked at, and I don't mean that as a detriment. That's just the way I feel. I'm not being entirely objective here, I'll admit. But looking at it from my perspective, I always saw the Destiny 2 campaigns and their stories as like Transformers movies, like Michael Bay Transformers movies. Right. Popcorn flicks. They're fun, they're flashy, they're a spectacle, but I don't expect to actually really care about the characters or the story, and I never really did. I had some little tinges of interest here, stuff I wish they expanded on, especially with Warmind, like with Nokris, Zol, and Abrade. Like, that stuff was surface level interesting, but they never really got deeper. Well, they did get deeper with some weapons and a lot of background stuff and fluff you have to search out for, but I really would have liked that stuff to be in the campaign, in the cutscenes, that sort of thing. So, for me, playing Forsaken, it really took me back quite a bit, because I cared. I cared about these characters I didn't really care too much about. I cared about Zavala, I cared about Ikora, I cared about Cade. Oh, Cade. Oh, man. It was so weird. It's so weird playing a game that I just played for the gameplay. I played Destiny 2 for the gameplay, for the visuals, and now I'm invested in the story and characters. Now I care. I want to see where this universe grows and evolves, and now I'm more invested than ever to look back into the past and dig into the lore, especially with the new Triumphs and Collection system we have on offer, which we'll get into later, I'm sure. But yeah, I care now. I care about Destiny. I don't just care about playing it just for fun, just because, oh man, I blew that alien's head off. He exploded into fire and space magic. That was amazing. Oh, the music's so good. Like, it's no longer just a visual and audio spectacle. I care. My heart is now invested in it. I want to see how these characters grow and evolve. And damn it, Cayde, can I just say that opening story mission in Forsaken, your last adventure with Cayde, God, that was such a good campaign mission. Not just in terms of set pieces, like in terms of combat set pieces, animations. It was so well paced. At first, you're having a good time with Cayde. You're being partners. The music is uplifting and inspiring, adventurous, and then the Barons show up, then the Scorn show up, and it suddenly turns into almost like a horror movie. And then you get to Cayde and his final farewell, and oh man, it was so well directed, and the dialogue so well written. And again, I wasn't expecting that. I expect from Curse of Osiris, from Warmind, from base Destiny, I expected something very cookie cutter, very generic, nothing really too inspired outside of a few funny one-liners here and there, of course coming from Cayde. But now, like, there wasn't a single line of dialogue that was cringe to me. There wasn't a single line of dialogue that I felt was throwaway. Like, exposition, like, mattered. The exposition was important. Like, again, it cared. Forsaken made me care, and I wasn't expecting to care. It made me care.
What's funny that you kind of lead it that way, though, too, with how Destiny 2, Osiris, and Warmind were one way, and now how Forsaken is another. For me, as somebody that, of course, really dips into the story for Destiny, who now has 4 books that are written out and dedicated to it, my perspective on that opening mission was them, if almost physically, like I want to say that it was like theoretically or like almost metaphysically, but no, it was physically killing anything that they had that was previously written in terms of tone or otherwise, totally off. And now with Cayde's death, that's the signifier to say that they're moving into a completely new realm of how they want to take this story. So as much as I hated the fact that we had Cayde die, it is still such an important moment because it's a turning point for the Destiny franchise. And you start to see that more and more with the way the Forsaken opens up. You see it with the Spider, you see it with Petravenge, you then see it with Ikora and the other Vanguard. You see his impact, his death has caused on the tower and within the system. And it's just empowering to kind of see that storytelling was allowed to stand out and do what it needed to within Forsaken. Something that previously had not been allowed for. And that is something that if I can make a small plug on this one, I'm working on a lore retrospective video, like well before we got on this call, and that's going to be something that I'm looking at, though, is like how the writers of Destiny and of Bungie over there have been able to, in parts, you can tell where they were stifled and where they were open to do some stuff. Forsaken is them just opening up the floodgates and letting them run wild. That is exactly what it feels like. The more and more I look into it, the more encapsulated I am with how fantastic of a job they've done for opening up the floodgates for the story and like where it's been. And I've only just scratched the surface on like what Forsaken has, which is the truly impressive part that I'm like going in 3 weeks here, and I still don't have everything really fully understood.
Oh, same here, man. Same here. I've been, well, I wouldn't say nonstop, but at least somewhat daily, hopping into Destiny 2, playing Forsaken, and I can safely say I have not experienced everything yet. I still haven't played the raid. I haven't tried out the... I heard there's been some changes to the Nightfall. It's much more difficult. I haven't been able to play that yet. There's a lot.
There's actually multiple Nightfalls that you can choose from, too.
Oh shit, it's not just one anymore.
So what they've also done, which I guess we'll talk about in mechanics and everything here a little bit too. One of my favorite parts that they did with the mechanics portion of D2, especially with Forsaken, obviously, they have the daily story mission that you can choose from, but there's 5 of them, so you can choose one of those 5, and it's on a rotation basically. I think it resets weekly though. But it gives you 5 of them that you can choose from to do. And they're heroic level, I think, at 540. 540 light level, power level. From there, though, you're able to select any of those anytime during the day, and you can go and play them and so on. But what they also did with they expanded strikes, though, as well, where you can go to that planet that strike is on, select that specific strike, and carry out that strike.
I love that. I love that.
That was something we had in D1, and we were all questioning why they took it away.
Oh, seriously? I didn't know that. That was in the first game.
Yep. It was also something where we could select any and all of the story missions and also jump into any and all of them. So our hope is that with one of the expansion pieces that they have that's coming up, it'll be a free update that they allow us to get into that. And that they just ran out of time to put in all the mission beacons for it. But that would be something that I would love to see happen again, that we could involve ourselves on any and all of those story missions at a whim. But both strikes and story missions were able to be carried out in Destiny 1 at any moment. So this is a good first step to kind of include all of that stuff again. And the last thing they did, though, as I mentioned before, they've also added that you can choose one of 3 Nightfalls and go into them. You can also do all 3 of them that week if you want to. But it helps for strike-specific loot and Nightfall-specific loot to be a little bit more commonplace for you to run in and pick up if need be. So plenty of really cool stuff that they've added with just the activity selection as well. But stuff that I was used to seeing from D1 that I think many of us had kind of questioned. Why did they get rid of it? Because it was such a good over-amplified sting that we could kind of get into and do an activity that we want to with buddies if they needed something or otherwise. But yeah.
You're making me want to play the first Destiny even more, damn it.
D1 by its end of its life cycle was very good, and I think that's what, for many of us as veterans, I think that's what D2 kind of let us down on. Is just the fact that it wasn't more of the same. And now, at this point, I heard people that were like, well, Forsaken is just going to be a Destiny, like the true Destiny 1.5 or whatever. And I'm kind of looking at this going, that's fine. Like, let them take everything that was great and good of the first game and encapsulate it into what is now a better engine, a little bit more freedom, just everything that was great about that old about Destiny 1, and make it into something that's going to be enjoyable with the new stuff in D2. And that's exactly what they did. So many people were talking down on it, but I was sitting here going, I know what D1 was like at the end of its lifetime. That was a good game. I would like that back, please. And if that's what they utilize as their basis going forward, I'm happy with that. And I can't, I guess for yourself, I know it's, limited in that idea from, of course, where I came from, but I can imagine for you too that's kind of the same idea. Like, this is what I kind of hope to have seen from day one with D2, and Bungie finally opened up and let it happen.
Well, I didn't know what to expect when I jumped into D2. I expected a big blockbuster first-person shooter. That's what I got. Like, I enjoyed my time with Destiny 2. I never disliked it. I sure as hell had some issues with it, but I always had fun with the game. I understood people's concerns. I understood people's criticisms about the game. I got that. I understood that. Wasn't the biggest deal to me. I've always liked Destiny 2, but never loved it. Now, with Forsaken, I love it. Not just, again, we'll get back a little bit more on the story and the campaign, but like you talked about earlier, all the new additions and changes to content, accessing strikes and story missions, just more options, more freedom, and I hope what you're saying really does come to pass in the future updates, and we really do just get complete full reign to replay not just the campaign, but get back to replaying adventures, because they kind of downgraded on that with Forsaken.
Yeah.
Not the biggest issue, but it's still content. But yeah, just... This is an improvement. This is an improvement, undeniably, from where Destiny 2 was at. I never had that thing to compare it to, though. I always thought, okay, well, this is Destiny. It seems like a really fun, casual game, cool sci-fi fantasy. That was it, a casual sci-fi fantasy game to me. Now, Destiny 2 is much more of a serious game, a more hardcore gamer game, and it's a lot easier to get yourself invested into it with the activities, the progression, which again we'll get into very shortly, and of course with the story. But to get back a little bit on the campaign,
yeah.
I'm curious how did you feel about how Bungie handled the Barons, all the new boss fights they added? Because again, I don't know how bosses were in the previous Destiny. Bosses for me in Destiny 2, up until Forsaken, have always been normal enemies, just a bit upgraded, given a bigger health bar, a little bit of a paint job. But the Barons were unique boss battles. They were unique boss battles with unique mechanics, and that really surprised me and really took me back. And they also gave them all dialogue, gave them all characters, which made me feel, again, more attached to the story, more attached to the campaign, more attached to this hunt we were going on to avenge Cade. So I'm curious, as a veteran, how you feel about the new Baron boss battles.
My thoughts on the Barons are just knowing what it was that was going into them because of the Game Informer stuff that Bungie had brought out previously. I didn't write that down in my full books yet, but I still have all the lists. It was like 5 pages of information that I got from them to begin with. So knowing that, I knew what they were trying to build these guys up as, present them as, showcase them as, and they took a lot of those pieces that we already knew from that Game Informer information and just blew it out of the park. All the uniqueness that these different Fallen, which granted, they're Scorn, they're not Fallen, they are technically separate, but the fact that I've been fighting the Fallen now for over 3 years and didn't know exactly what to expect with the Scorn, and am pleasantly surprised with how the Scorn actually handle themselves, should say something for how the uniqueness of that enemy kind of is. Even within the story, it's a unique elementing besides. But the Barons, like, individually, like, the ones that always kind of come to mind are, like, the Trickster, the Mad Bomber, the Hangman. Those are the 3 that are, like, the biggest, with one exception, the Mindbender.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a lore nut, the Mindbender, of course, really makes my mind bend. Puns. Yeah, it totally was. The entire idea of him being able to, like, have hive capability is insane. And some of the capabilities that are behind him are just amazing. But I love the Mindbender, I think, is like the number 1. The fact that each of them have their own different characteristics and styling is also fantastic. So I definitely do appreciate what they've done with the Barons. I think if I'm possibly pondering properly, they're probably the most unique thing that you as a newbie would have also seen for a while. But before I forget on that notion, I would probably say that the Barons are probably some of the most unique enemies that I've seen in Destiny, probably since Rise of Iron. I think Rise of Iron was the last time we saw like a change in how most of the Fallen were with the Siva crisis and everything. But even Taken King, I was largely fighting Hive, and the Taken were they were the same models I've been facing for a long time, as you already know, of the Taken, just with different capabilities and being able to, like, portal jump around or whatever besides.
Like, the Taken, I just gotta say this as a noob, while they look and sound cool, they're just reskins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was hard to sell that one to anybody else. I was like, Taken King's great, but they didn't do much with the enemies.
Yeah, I can say with the Scorn, though, as a noob, I was very, very surprised, because after Curse of Osiris and Warmind, it's just reskins. Reskinned Vex, reskinned Hive. They look and sound cool. I'm okay with that. It's fun shooting them. Now, with Scorn, they're a much more interesting challenge. Their abilities to teleport, the new Screebs? They're called Screebs, right? The creepy little buggers.
The first time I saw them, I was like, I don't need more dead space in my Destiny. No, get it out. Get it out.
Oh. Yeah, the Scorn are they're a brand new enemy faction. They are, and yes, they're based off Fallen, but they act completely different. They look completely different. They have different attacks and abilities and weapons, all that good stuff. Oh, and those shield guys. Oh, they're worse than the Cabal shield guys.
Yup.
But yeah, as a noob, I really enjoy fighting the Scorn. It's definitely some much needed variety because I've killed just as a D2 player. Over the weekly and daily spurts I've had playing Destiny 2, I've killed so many Fallen and Cabal. It's by the numbers for me. It's like me in Warframe. Like, I know the Grineer, the Corpus, the Infested. I know them inside and out. There's no surprises. It's routine now. It's a fun routine, but routine. With the Scorn, it really has things, for me, mixed up. I definitely have to change my playstyle when I encounter the Scorn, and I really like that. I really like when a video game has different enemy types that change how you play. Well, one of my favorite video games, my favorite video game of all time, and you're well aware of this, Doom. One of the reasons I love Doom so much is that every single demon changes the way you play and interact with the game, what weapons you use, and now with the Scorn on top of all the other enemy factions, there's a lot more variety to the gameplay.
Definitely. Yeah, the Scorn add in that extra layer that I think was kind of missing, if you will. It was a good jump start to kind of give Forsaken what it needed. And Forsaken, just as a name leading back to the Scorn, has so many layers behind it besides. Which, granted, I get sidelined to the narrative too easily because that's what I focus on so much with Destiny. But yeah, forgive me on that one.
Well, fair enough. But
no, that's good to hear.
But fair enough. To get back to the narrative, though, I want to ask you as a veteran.
Yeah.
I don't know how, for as a noob, I've always felt like Destiny has had a villain problem. Like, it hasn't really had the most compelling villains. Gaul, I thought, was going to be that compelling villain, and there were moments where he was compelling, especially when he was exclaiming his backstory and how he wanted the Traveler to choose him. I really thought Gaul was going to be a great villain, and then near the final mission, he kind of teetered off, which was disappointing. I still like Gaul, especially because I love his voice actor. I still like Gaul, but he wasn't the villain I feel Destiny needed. Now, in comes Uldren Sov. Again, now, I know he was in the first game, had no connection to him, though. This was my introduction to him. And this is the villain I feel Destiny needed. A villain with a personal connection to the player. On top of having the Barons and the Fanatic, the top Baron, have that connection to you, taunting you, teasing you, and how Ghost keeps reminding you, 1 more, 2 more till Uldren. Like, you're chasing after Uldren, then you have those cutscenes, and that mystery behind what's going on with Uldren and his motivations. Like, again, like I said earlier, Destiny Forsaken got me to care. It got me to care about the characters, got me to care about the villain. I was interested in Uldren's plight. I was interested, what's going on with this guy? Why did he kill Cade? What the hell did I just call him?
Cade? Is that like a combination of like Gabe Newell and Cade 6? What is going on here, Gabe, please?
Oh, I'm gonna Photoshop that. I'm gonna put that in the video. Oh, that's great. Okay. But anyways, yeah, and Uldren's sister, again, I know she was in the first game, never got to encounter her. But yeah, I was interested. I was compelled. So I'm curious how Uldren, and this will lead us into the final story mission. Oh, the final campaign mission. Oh, what a ride that was. But I'm really curious how Uldren has compared to previous Destiny villains. Is he the best Destiny villain? Is he a step up? Like, similar to how we talked about the storytelling earlier.
Well, let's take out the emphasis, I guess, on Uldren having been the one that shot Cade. If we take that element away from him, and we place in the fact that he still brought up the Scorn, which are counter to everything that the Fallen basically stand for. If we look back on the fact that he was basically leading his people on, the fact that he was going through like different corruptions and so on, even before we knew him in Destiny 1, there are several things that make him a good villain, but I don't think that he is the best villain. I think that right is actually still reserved for Oryx. But
Okay.
most of that is also in due part to the fact that we are linked to Oryx because of Crota, and that was from the Dark Below, which was Destiny 1's first expansion pack. But Oryx has been alive, or had been alive, or still is alive. We're still questioning that one pretty heavy.
Hive lore. How does it work?
Yeah, hive lore. How does it work? It's like magnets. Anyway, the whole idea with Oryx, though, is I still get this feeling that like 25,000 is the number that I think of when it comes to him. 25,000 years or around that, if not longer, seems to be the time period at which Oryx is doing all the stuff that he has throughout the solar system. Or not solar system, throughout the universe or galaxy or whatever. We're not sure how far his reach really went. But that being said, I wouldn't know that if it wasn't for the writings of the Books of Sorrow, and I haven't had a chance to really dig into a lot of the motivations of Uldren just yet. I still have to get to that same level that I am on with Oryx at this point to really say if Uldren is an equal or better villain. Now, as far as a dastardly villain goes, as far as like where he kind of fits into the bill and everything, he is easily far and above better than Gaul without question. But if I had to put him on levels of like where he sat at, I would probably put him like near a Oryx level, all the same, with everything I just got done saying, without knowing the stuff behind him, which should be testament to how they ended up showcasing him throughout the campaign missions in Forsaken. That, I think, was a very, very big turn compared to what we had seen of many other villains previously. But funny enough, that's actually how involved Oryx had been during the Taken King. Like, he popped up in like every other cutscene, and then he also was like popping up throughout the story a little bit as well. He had the echoes that he could play with and show up and try to stop our Guardian from doing a thing that it's trying to do. Uldren doesn't have that same presence, of course, but he kind of has that same presence because of what he's done with the Barons. And I feel that a large majority of the storytelling for Uldren is also done through the Barons as well, especially through Fikrul, because Fikrul is constantly referring, creepily or not, or however you really want to take it, to Uldren as his father.
Bow chicka wow wow.
No thanks. No, you take it that way. That's fine. I'm gonna be over here saying nope. So, the daddy figure that Uldren might be, just to round out that joke a little bit, the entire concept of the Barons, however, being presented how they were, to kind of touch back on them again, I feel like most things that Uldren has done has been more impactful to the system than as similar or very close to how it was with Oryx. And again, that says something when Uldren doesn't really have supernatural powers. So that says a lot for how that character is. But again, very good villain. I think he's totally good. But I think that there might be some better villains that are out there within Destiny's lore. But again, I gotta dig. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. What did you think of him? Like, from your perspective, going from like Gaul, I guess, up, is everything you hoped he was, or?
Well, I will say he's a better written character. He's more compelling, but I'm super petty. So let me just get this petty bullshit gripe out of the way. He's not nearly as intimidating as the previous Destiny villains are. Yes, Zal, Nokris, Panoptes, shallow as hell, but they looked cool and intimidating as hell. Going from gods, giant robot god, giant hive god, worm god, just going from gods to awoken emo. Not as intimidating. That being said, his voice actor does a great performance, especially in the scenes with that hallucination of his sister. Like, you can feel and see the conflict. Like, he's a much better written villain, much better presented villain. On top of that, this is actually interesting. I actually read the lore on Uldren in the Triumphs from all the lore I've collected. I actually read that. And it adds more depth to his character, that extra backstory, and you realize, wow, this guy has struggled. This guy has been through some shit. And again, like in that final moment in the final campaign mission, which we'll get into next, in the final moments of that campaign mission, like I'm genuinely in conflict with myself. Is it the right thing to kill him? Yes, he killed Cade, but was that really him?
Right.
And that's good writing. That's good writing. That's good storytelling. Again, I know I'm just repeating this throughout the video, but I can't emphasize enough. As a Destiny 2 noob, someone who didn't play the first Destiny, wasn't invested in the first Destiny, Forsaken made me care. Uldren made me care. Cade's death made me care. I care. I'm invested. I'm very curious to see where it goes from here. What happens to Petra after this? What happens to Ikora and Zavala after this? What happens to the Awoken and the Scorn? Like, where do they go from here? I'm interested in those answers. I wasn't interested in answers before. I didn't care what happened to the Cabal after I killed Gaul. I didn't care what happened to the Hive after I killed Zol. I didn't care about Rasputin. He was just a cool sounding AI. But now I care. And it makes me look back at the previous... if I can speak English for a moment. It makes me look back at the previous expansions and wonder if there's depth there that I'm missing, or if Forsaken added some more depth, like added more meaning to those previous endeavors. Like, it's very, very interesting. So, yeah, I'd say Uldren, objectively, best villain in Destiny 2 so far from what I've experienced, and I do like him, but I'm a sucker for cool designs. I'm an absolute sucker for cool designs. So Uldren wins in terms of character, but all the previous main baddies win in terms of looks, for me at least. Mm-hmm. I would love that. That's another reason I would love to play the first Destiny, and you bring up Oryx from the Taken King. I've seen Oryx. He looks awesome. I would love to fight him. I'd love to... he has everything I'd want from a Destiny villain. He actually has character, backstory, some depth, a connection to the main character, motivation, stuff like that, and he looks amazing and threatening. I'm hoping that with the pyramids, the darkness that was teased at the end of the Destiny 1 campaign, that whenever that expansion or Destiny 3 rolls along, they'll learn everything from how they've constructed these villains, from the looks and aesthetics and the threatening... what's the word? Just appearance, I'll say. The threatening appearance of previous villains, and they take the character and the depth of the Barons and Uldren and apply that to the pyramids or the darkness or whatever it's going to be. Man, I'm very excited for the future of Destiny.
Yeah, it's in a better place than it had been, I would say. That's for dang sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess for leading up to it, we've been kind of dancing and skirting around it here a little bit.
Yes.
We find out that, of course, Uldren isn't necessarily the end baddie of everything anyway.
Yeah, it's Cthulhu.
I'm gonna say we get to this eldritch looking thing that's got tentacles and the whole nine. No pun intended for those that know the Destiny lore there. It's just absolutely insane how that came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that it came out of a portal, but it came out of absolutely nowhere. I don't think that anybody that hadn't seen some of the leaked information or otherwise knew that was coming. And once you start to realize that Uldren was just a pawn in the overall scheme of things, and then you start to see the voice of Riven, you're just like, excuse me, what? Hey, check, please. I was just like, I don't know what I'm fighting right now. I legitimately have no idea what I'm fighting right now. I felt this way with Warmind. Warmind had actually brought up this idea where I didn't know what to expect of it now, where that campaign ended, Rasputin did his thing and whatnot, and I was just like, well, now what? Because if Rasputin is out there and watching over the solar system the way that he is, and he's probably even sent his satellites out even past our solar system so he can monitor what's incoming past that, what else is there that's going to be a large threat to us? And I was not expecting to have what we did. I really don't want to dip into spoilers too much on that one because I
Mm.
think that it is something for you to really experience. Uh, I know that some of you have probably seen some of the stuff with like the last mission, but the implications of the voice of Riven and what that realistically means for the Destiny universe is incredible. All of the stuff that they're starting to really showcase to us and build up for us is just incredibly different from where it used to be. And as somebody that is a veteran and a story veteran at this point as well, I say that without like even flinching. I think this is the best place that as I said before, that Destiny has ever been, either in its story, in its gameplay, or otherwise. I really do think this is it.
And I think that really all culminated in the final campaign mission. Can we just gush a moment about how good that campaign mission is? You finally enter the Dreaming City. The mission starts with a war zone, with spiders, fallen troops engaging the Scorn. There's explosions. The music's wrapping up. You face the Fanatic. You go through this awe-inspiring looking tower. You go into the Taken Ascendant realm. The music, the combat. Oh my god. And then the final boss. Oh man, when you fight the voice of Riven and that epic orchestra plays and the floor starts being made of Taken and you're jumping around shooting for your life. Oh my, that was such a good campaign mission. So good, so well developed, so well paced. Oh man, I'm so used to just shooting enemies in corridors, moving from one corridor to the next, shooting more enemies. I enjoyed that. I like that about Destiny 2. But oh man, just the scale. The scale, I don't know how this compares to campaign missions from the first Destiny, but just based off my my previous examples of playing Destiny 2, the final missions have always been a bit of a visual spectacle, especially with the final bosses, with Panoptes, with Zol, with Gaul. Like, I've always, again, for me, Destiny 2 has always been about spectacle, and goddamn, it wasn't just a visual spectacle, the end campaign mission. Oh, I felt like the feelings I had, the intensity, like, this is it, this is the moment, I'm going to avenge Cade, I'm going to find out what's going on with the Dreaming City, this is it, the culmination of all my efforts, this is so epic!
And then you get to the end of it and you're just like, oh, can we turn back the clock, please?
I know, I was having so much fun, now I feel sad again.
Yeah. Yeah, it just, the fact that it, like, winds out the way that it does, giving you those moments of lead up, and then afterward where the lead up is still going. I mean, that's the thing about Forsaken. Like, you think most games, they end once you see the credit rolls happen. Destiny's had this very good line where they've always kind of treaded, where after the credit roll is done, that's where your end game kind of begins. Like, they've given you the base power level, they've given you the base character level and everything for you to go by. Now it's time to actually start to gear up and start to figure out like what else is going on within the universe or within the place that you've unlocked, to really dig into the nitty gritty of like what's happening now. And that's where everything starts to open up. That's where you start to really realize that those collections and triumphs make a very big difference in how your gameplay is going to start to be formulated and carried on. You start to mess around with the different places in the Dreaming City and all of the little nooks and crannies that are kind of embedded into that. You start to then realize and figure out that there's like all these extra bits and pieces that you hadn't seen relevant to any other planet from on either Io or Nessus or otherwise, that just expands on the way that you thought that the game was going to play previously. And as somebody that's a veteran, again, I don't think I can recall there being that many nooks and crannies in an area ever. And that is saying something.
Jeez.
When I start to look at the Dreaming City as a whole. Like, the large problem I had that really kept my overall, the one thing that really kind of steered my hype away from Forsaken as we were leading up into it, was that I started to hear all these typical words that got used, like, this is our biggest expansion ever, we're taking the gloves off, we're really making it that it's going to be big. And I was like, I've been around marketing schemes a little bit too long. Like, I know how this sounds already. and I'm already tempering that it's going to be like half as big as they're kind of expecting or saying it's going to be. And then I get into the game and I'm like, no, they were serious. Never mind. The whole time I was just blown away by the fact that like they were saying one thing is like, this isn't gonna, it's gonna be our biggest end game ever. It's gonna have all this stuff that you can do. It's just gonna keep expanding from moment one. And I'm like, it's not gonna do that. I was wrong. But that leads to something that you and I had kind of talked about the other day, I think, and that was about like time-gated content.
Yes.
I know some people are okay with the idea of time-gated content if it makes sense. I know others just absolutely abhor it.
That's me. That's me.
But being that you're not a fan of it, what do you think of what they're doing with it here?
I think it's a major improvement from how it used to be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, we already went over how you can, like, before, you could only replay 4 story missions, up until Warmind, you could only replay 4 story missions a week once. And as someone who likes single-player campaigns and replaying single-player campaigns, that was a real kick in the balls for me. Yeah. I at least had adventures, but now they've scaled that back. But at the very least, we're getting apparently, I just found this out. The heroic adventures, they switch up every day. Like it's a weekly heroic adventure on one area on one planet, but at least it switches up every day. So that's good. That's good. But yeah, I'm really happy. Like, again, we went over previously how the strikes go. I just really like all the improvements to the overall PvE space. I like that I have more incentive to replay stuff, not just with the daily and weekly powerful engrams, but there's also the bounties. We didn't get into I think this is a good time to get into it, talking about PvE and progression. I love the new bounty system. I love this. I love how every vendor now is important. I have reason to visit every vendor to get bounties and challenges, and they reward me just for playing the game. I play the game how I normally would, but by killing enemies in the specific ways, completing objectives. I have reason to replay objectives to get more rewards, and the fact that bounties reset daily. The thing about me with Destiny 2, I always, up until Forsaken, played it as a casual game. I jumped in just when I wanted to shoot some aliens. I had all the weapons I wanted, I had all the armor I wanted, I got it all fairly quickly. So for me, it was just my alien murder simulator. But now, this is a true looter shooter. This is a true grindy game. This is on the same level as my other kind of lifestyle games, my live service games that eat up a lot of my time, Warframe and The Division specifically. And it's really, really nice to have another alternative to those. Like, I love those games, but now I love Destiny as that kind of game. I love that I can jump into the game, I always have something to do, always have something to chase after, just like with Warframe and The Division. With Warframe, I'm always chasing after more resources, more ways to increase my power and strength. Same thing with The Division, always chasing after that better gun, that better roll. And now with random rolls, on top of the bounties that reward you for just playing the game and doing challenges, now we have the random roll weapons and random roll armor. Oh my goodness. Now I'm hungering for those combinations, especially weapons with the Rampage perk, the Dragonfly perk. I really like those. Oh man, and full auto perks on scout rifles, on pulse rifles. Like, it's exciting to get new guns. It's exciting. Before, like, I'd see a particular gun that I wanted, I'd chase after it, I get it, I'd use it, I'd be happy. I wasn't really excited. Like, every time I got new legendaries, blues, stuff I didn't care about, dismantle it. It was just legendary shard fodder. Now everything matters. Everything matters. Every piece of loot you get matters. Oh man. Like, I love all the incentives for PvE. As a new player, I love these incentives. Like, it's a much more rewarding experience. Like, the gameplay was already rewarding for me because it was a visual spectacle and it was fun to play. But now you have that progression system, you have that depth behind the looting and the shooting. As a new player, this is a whole new experience to me, and Destiny 2 feels like a whole new game. Like, like, for me, it was always casual, and always a casual game. Now it's a more hardcore lifestyle game. Like, on par with all the other previous games I've mentioned. It's a game I can come back to and always has something to do. And on top of that, incentives me to try all the content. It gives me incentive to play everything. With other games, I'm usually I stick to what I prefer. Like even with my previous lifestyle games like Warframe and with The Division, I usually just play what I want, and I still get the loot and resources that I need. I'm happy with that. But with Destiny, it kind of forces me out of my comfort zone, and I kind of like that. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Crucible, the PvP multiplayer. I have warmed up to it since Forsaken. You and I played some recently, and I surprisingly had a much better time than I'm used to. But I like that I have all this content to sift through, and I'm rewarded. Even though it may not be content I'm particularly fond of, if I give it a few hours of my time, I'm rewarded for my time. I really like that.
Yeah, it's still that easy pick up and play atmosphere that Destiny has always been very good about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's now taking it to the next level of like how far you can kind of grind out with it. Now, granted, you say random rolls, and I'm like, yeah, they should have just had that from like day one because they had it in Destiny 1 to begin with, even at the end. But I'm glad that they're back. That being said, because I feel like every time I pick up a new piece of legendary gear, I have something else that I'm kind of like interested in looking at it and going, all right, how is this going to roll? How can I make this work into my loadouts that I have? Do I have another piece of equipment that can kind of mirror it and work with it? Because I'll pick up an auto rifle and all of a sudden I look at my armor and I go, I have nothing geared towards auto rifles at all. I need to make this happen. And now I'm searching for a set that's going to make me think about how autos will work out. Or how small arms will be, because they've made those topics a little bit more broad. And they've also like cut down the scale on like how fast it is to get a hold of your class abilities as well. Especially if you play certain classes, you get them quicker than others. But in general, you'll find that you start getting your supers more often. I think one time last night where we were playing Iron Banner, I had 4 supers go off in a single match.
God damn!
I cannot remember the last time that happened. So that being said, they have definitely kind of helped out the power fantasy a little bit more as well. So time to kill is kind of a big thing that I know is still being talked about with the Crucible guys. Hand cannons are definitely now the meta once again within there. But you've got other weapons that are still doing work and are still doing fine. It always depends now on that roll and you getting a pretty good roll on the equipment that you have and being more comfortable with the gear that you have. Which I know for some is like, well, that sounds like a lot of grinding. But after you start to realize that like everything you do is giving you legendary equipment, including bounties and everything besides, you start to get a lot of equipment very quickly. I went from, I think, we'll go from like a legendary shard count because I know that that's a fair way to kind of explain it. In D2 on PC, I had a whole of 50 shards that I started with. And by the end of the campaign, I only had 75, but it was still enough that I could kind of work with some stuff, play with some things, etc. Now at this point, I can't think of a time where I don't have 300 or more.
Oh, you lucky bugger.
And that's all because of all the stuff that I just keep breaking down or saying that I don't need anymore, etc. And I know that, like, I, as somebody that is invested in Destiny, that sounds like a really low number, and it is, because I know guys that are sitting at like 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 legendary shards.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Oh, I know. But I, at least as somebody that has been around for a while and not being able to play because I make content and have a life outside of said content.
No way, seriously?
Yeah, I know that kind of happens. But for me, like, being able to have that amount should say something. I think in total, I have about 30 hours put into Forsaken at this point. And being that it's been out for about 3 weeks, most of my time spent on the game was in my first week. I really put in a lot of time towards it at that point because I was like, I want to get through this. I want to really understand what's happening with it, etc. But just from my little bits and pieces of being able to play and knowing that so many others are still within the same realm that I am, where they also are still kind of saying like all these changes that happen are perfect and exactly where we needed them to be with D2. That, to me, says everything that I need to know when it comes down to like my experience, not being as like hundreds of hours in at this point, but still being on par with everybody else's. That's what's kind of fun for me to think of.
There is one thing, though, that I really dislike that they've done to the progression system, and that's how they've handled Infusion. While I like the idea that you have to go to all the different planets, all the different zones, to gather resources for Infusion, I like that. I think you know what I'm going to say, masterwork cores. I think, personally for me, I would have preferred if masterwork cores stayed exclusively to upgrading your weapons to masterwork. Now that you need masterwork cores to infuse, I'm not the biggest fan. I'm not. One thing I really liked about Destiny 2, when it was more casual before Forsaken, is that I could play with the armor and weapons I wanted. As long as I had legendary shards, I could infuse my favorite weapons and armor and just play with that to my heart's content. Now, it's a much greater effort, especially since masterwork cores are much harder to come by outside of Spider and giving him legendary shards, which is why I barely have any legendary shards. I keep giving them to Spider when I can.
Yeah. Now, that is my biggest complaint, I think. Like, and this should say something when, at least in my perspective, this should say something when the things I have problems with from the game are unfortunately are fortunately things that can actually be changed rather easily.
Exactly.
And why Bungie feels that masterwork cores are still okay for Infusion like 3 weeks in is still beyond me. But those kind of numbers can be played with, and that kind of stuff can actually be easily changed out. It is a matter that either they deem that they want to limit our progress a little bit more, make it more that like, yeah, you got this piece of armor, but do you really want it kind of idea, to really identify what kind of playstyle we have. I am not the biggest fan of them putting masterwork cores in that system while also having masterwork cores being there for masterworks. Mm-hmm. There's like 2 levels that those things are needed for, and they're not the easiest things to come by. If it was
easy fix, just off the top of my head, killing a boss, 1 masterwork core, simple as that. Right.
Yep, I gotta say, if they could do something like that, or have it that the majors like the orange bars have a chance to drop in them sometimes, that would also be okay. Because then while you're just palling around grinding, you're still getting a hold of some.
Exactly.
Or just giving the chance of it from legendary drops or otherwise. Like, there's easy fixes to the masterwork solution, to the masterwork problem. It's just a matter that either Bungie isn't to that point where they want to investigate it, or they really didn't think that it was that big of an issue going into the game. But those that are new to Forsaken, I cannot imagine how they are getting along right now, because I only had like 20 cores as it was, coming from from Warmind era into Forsaken, and they're all gone. They're definitely all gone. But it does make you pause to think about what else you need to get. But yeah, the materials on planets are easy to get a hold of now. You go and loot a chest, you do a patrol, whatever, you get a bunch of them. I get 25 in like 5 minutes. Like, that's not the problem whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, not the problem. It's just how hard masterwork cores are to come by. That's the big thing. It would be okay if it was just easier to get them. Oh, it would also be okay if Spider wasn't. Now, I can't speak ill of Spider. I love him. He's one of my new favorite characters in the game. Well, I won't speak ill of him. But if he just didn't up his prices on legendary shards every time you bought 1, 2 free, it goes from 20 to 40 to 80. I'm like, God.
I'm going to say, it gives you incentive to log in every day, but I think the best incentive is going to talk on a Spider to get one of them at least a day.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're coming up on like an hour here at this point.
I realized that. I
did have a couple big things for you, actually.
Oh,
that I wanted
okay.
To make sure that we touched on.
No problem. Shoot.
So, being a warlock and myself being a warlock, we don't exactly have the best perspective on like the other classes.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, what is it that you feel is overpowered, and what do you feel is underpowered right now? Like as a sandbox overall idea, I think that that's a good place to at least get perspective on like where the great scale is versus the low scale.
Ah, okay. Well, are we talking about specifically PvE or PvP or both?
Both, just measure it between both of them, I guess, or like one PvE, one PvP, one Gambit, because I still didn't say that that's my favorite thing ever to do. Anyway.
Oh, we'll get into Gambit before this video's over, but yeah. So from my perspective, in terms of what's overpowered and underpowered, I'll start with PvP because that's more easier to identify. I definitely think that compared to all the other classes, like Warlock is the weakest class. They are the biggest disadvantage. Titans with the one-hit melee charge. That's I understand that was in the first game, and now I get to experience that for myself. Not fun. Hunters have a lot more mobility, and some of their supers, like, give them just such a huge mobility advantage and able to just really get in the melee kills. So I think, like, Warlock could use a buff in PvP. That's just me. Like, I'm not being entirely objective. I haven't looked at all the stats. I haven't looked at all the variables. But just how I feel so far, I feel like Warlock could use a buff in PvP. In terms of weapons being overpowered, I haven't really encountered anything too overpowered yet. Granted, I haven't been able to infuse all my year 1 exotics, see how they fare. And I haven't been able to, like, get my hands on all the new exotics. I know there's a ton of new exotics I have yet to play with. So, I wouldn't say there's anything necessarily overpowered right now for PvE, at least. I think PvE is in a good place. I'm not seeing myself getting completely demolished by any particular enemies or anything like that. I'm really enjoying myself. I'm not getting frustrated. Usually I notice, like, when something's underpowered or overpowered, I start getting frustrated because I'm like, ooh, I feel like I shouldn't have died there. Ooh, I feel like I should have gotten that kill there. Haven't felt like that. Things have felt really good for me so far. But again, I haven't played with all the weapons yet. I haven't played with, I don't have all the armor sets, like, I don't have all the exotics, so I don't have the greatest idea, just first impressions overall in terms of balance. I like it for PvE. PvP, I think Warlocks need a buff. I think they need, like, one ability or something that at least puts them on the same scale as the DPS the Titan can deal out, and the maneuverability and the versatility of the Hunters. But yeah, that's just me so far. So far, I think balance overall in a really good place. First impressions, though, but I need to play with all the new exotics. Because from what I understand, there's a new raid exotic. What's the name? Thousand Voices? It's a new fusion rifle, and that thing looks overpowered from what I've seen. But I haven't been able to play with it, haven't been able to play the raid yet. But so far, I think everything's in a good place. I think balance overall is in a good place. Just from a new perspective, never played the first Destiny, I don't have that to compare to, but overall, I think overall Destiny 2 PvE has been pretty balanced. I've always felt powerful. I understand for a lot of veterans you don't feel as powerful compared to the first game, but for me, I've always felt powerful, especially with my my grenades, my supers, a lot of the exotics I've had a lot of fun with. I've always felt powerful, but now I feel even more powerful with all the new buffs they've added and the new subclasses. I haven't been able to play all the new subclasses, though. I'm still upgrading the new Arc subclass for the Warlock, but I've really been enjoying the new Attunement of Fission for the Void subclass. I always played Dawnblade, Solar Dawnblade before. Now I'm exclusively playing Void Fusion, Attunement of Fission. Blah, words, English. But yeah, I'm surprised. I strictly was Dawnblade Solar, but now I can't get off the Void subclass. I love the new subclass for the Warlock so far.
Nice.
Man, well, that leads me into asking you a quick question about the PvE. Are you enjoying yourself? Are you enjoying PvE? Do you just, like, spend hours playing the game and you're like, oh, I've lost track of time? Is that kind of the game for you now? Because I know for a lot of people it got repetitive, it got boring, especially for vets. That's a common complaint I heard. That just wasn't fun anymore. Like, are you just enjoying doing patrols and public events? Is that fun for you again?
Yes. Just in a word, yes. I do find myself losing several hours where I just kind of, like, blink and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what have I been? Why is it like 4 hours later? What just happened? That's actually one reason I'm having a hard time finding enough time to actually jump into the game, because I know what it's kind of doing to me on a mental scale.
Oh.
It's very enjoyable for me because of the fact that I'm like wanting to play it, that I like want to get into it again because it feels like old time Destiny. But then I look at my productivity and I'm just like, I haven't made anything or done anything today. This is dangerous. But for me, like it does everything right. Like it's not going to do everything right for every person, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
That's why there are so many different games out there that kind of feel like this or fit this way. But for me, Destiny, Forsaken especially, at least, has really done a very good job of taking all the stuff I liked from the previous game in D1 and taking them over and comparing them and compiling them into some of like the greatest hits that, if you will, is now Forsaken. I still have a ton of fun just going around the Tangled Shore, where my first impressions of that with that opening scene was just like, this seems like really empty right now, and like I've seen this already. And then I get into like some of the other areas and I'm like, never mind, this is amazing. This is so good. It still has that feel like you want it to feel like the outlaw desertish kind of land, but they do a good enough job where it does tie it differently. And when I'm sick of that, I go to the Dreaming City and I start to get a little bit more of a challenge on my hands. Along with also having different patrols in a different area, in a different environment altogether. They went from like entirely desolate to incredibly lush and incredibly different in terms of how it looks.
Oh yeah,
And I
especially
cannot
when compared to Mercury. That was a big disappointment. I liked Mars from Warmind. That was very nice, but Mercury was like when I first played Curse of Osiris. Sorry to go on a little side tangent, but just to give comparison, like it looked pretty, but I was shocked at how little there was. Like this is a Destiny expansion. That like this is what everyone raves about. Like yeah. I was disappointed. I still had fun with the expansion. Well, I was like, this doesn't seem like doesn't seem much. Doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Forsaken comes around. Tangled Shore, Dreaming City. Oh my God! I'd go as far to say they're some of the most beautiful locations in a video game ever. The art design is phenomenal. Especially the Dreaming City. God damn. I'm not gonna lie, I spent a few good minutes just stopping and staring. Looks so beautiful.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna say all the little detail that they've done and all of the just the larger elements that they've kind of brought to the table when it comes down to Forsaken. It's obvious like what they've decided to put together with the expansion. I've actually been having this image where I shot an abomination with my arrow, and it's actually still pointed up. This like I'm aiming down the sights, and I never noticed like how much detail they put into like the bowstrings and everything.
Oh too. Yeah.
They look like straight bowstrings and whatnot. Like the art team for what they have done is fantastic. Just absolutely wonderful work. And being that they put as much detail as they do in, it's all like almost what a Hideo Kojima game would be.
Oh yeah,
that should say something. Like,
yeah,
they do a fantastic job, even with their little like, oh, we can get out of the map right here. Let's try this a little bit and see how far this goes. All of a sudden, you get booted to orbit or something. Anyway, I cannot gush enough that I'm really enjoying myself. The fact that they've instituted a lot of those the bounty systems into the old worlds. The fact that they also have a lot of the collectibles and grabbables for lore unlocks and whatnot on different the other planets as well to utilize their space again. I feel like there's reason to still go back to the other worlds, even without having the need to like go and
get the resources for Infusion.
All the resources, yeah. Like you still have reason to go back to them.
Oh yeah.
So I give them a lot of credit with like how they put that together. It's slight. It's not like it really draws you to go to those places again, but there is reason to still go back to those planets, even if it's over the course of time here, you go back for like a week or two at a time. Like you're still going back to those planets.
I can only imagine what it's going to be like for a noob, a real noob, like someone who picks up Destiny right after the Forsaken update, never played Destiny before. That's going to be quite the experience. Not only do they have a breadth of content to go through, but all these new features and added depth, especially with the collections and triumphs. Oh man.
Yeah, I'm gonna say we really didn't even talk about them too much, and I feel like if we carry this on too long, much longer, we're gonna be here for a lot
Yeah,
longer. But like,
yeah. So how
just
about 3 more questions, and I think we should wrap it up.
well, I'm gonna say I almost feel like we could just sum it up with the stuff that we didn't even talk about. To be frank, like
Hmm?
we didn't talk about the triumphs, we didn't talk about the collections,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't talk about what those really bring to the table and how they really can emphasize and help the grind. Because if your triumph score isn't enough, then like filling up the collectibles box is also pretty cool to do. Eververse is something else we didn't really talk about because
Oh
the
yeah.
emphasis on Eververse, that is something that has actually gone down quite a bit. There is still stuff behind the system. Yes, we're not going to say that it doesn't exist,
Of
but
course.
it is something that, at least to me, is nowhere near as heavy as it used to be. You still have exotics that are locked behind it. You still have some stuff that you can pick up from it, like the dances and so on. Uh, but I would like to point out that they're running. If this means anything to anybody, they've been running some of the bundles as more sales more than anything else, which is kind of cool. And not even that, but just the fact that like the shaders can be reacquired after you pick up one of them
Oh
from
yeah.
the collectibles and everything.
That is a
Huge help.
huge plus. Huge
Yeah.
plus.
And the thing that we really didn't talk about at all either is Eververse also has bounties. So it
Yes.
takes a little bit for you to get a hold of the tickets and everything from the
Engrams.
engrams
From
that you
every bright
produce from
engram you
leveling
get, you
up and
get a ticket.
everything. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And after you collect those tickets, like all of a sudden you get a bounty for 150 bright dust, and you're just like, oh, okay, that was kind of super simple. There's also the weekly where they have the prismatic matrix back as well, and they give you one of those orbs back too. And it makes it easier for you for like items that you've already unlocked. And even then, it feels like either because of the way that the grind is put together, or the fact that you're able to get more EXP from turning in bounties, you are getting EXP at a fundamentally faster rate now, which makes the need for Eververse or the Bright Engrams themselves much lighter than it used to be.
There's
But the
just no
systems,
incentive to spend money. There's no incentive to
no,
buy anything from there. Like you're
no.
going to earn enough bright dust to just get what you want in game. Like
Yeah,
if I
if
didn't
you're
know any
going
better,
to
I wouldn't say there were
spend
any
money
microtransactions
anywhere,
in the game.
yeah, if you're going to spend money anywhere, put it in for the annual pass.
Mhm.
Quite frankly, like that's where I would say to go ahead and pop the cash if you feel like you want to put them a little bit more towards them. And that's not like shilling or anything. That's just saying like get your own value back for like what you're putting out in terms of cash.
Mhm.
Microtransactions as a whole just do not feel like a huge emphasis unless you're really after something towards the end of a season or otherwise. And even then, it's so there's like you said, there's just little to no incentive when it comes down to actually like purchasing microtransactions. This stuff is still there. Yeah, we're not going to hide that it's still there,
I can
but there
safely
feels like
say
there's lesser and lesser behind it.
I can safely say, if you don't, if you allow me this dig, I can safely say that Destiny 2 has better monetization than Overwatch.
Oh God, yes. Oh God, yes. Like the fact that you actually have bounties you can like complete and turn in and get EXP from it, versus how Overwatch is, which is just, hey, how about you just go grind the game and get the EXP, okay?
And the
Yeah,
fact
more
that
than
the
that.
in-game currency is locked behind the loot boxes. Now you actually earn the in-game currency from playing the game.
Yup.
Oh man. But yeah, what would you like to talk about last? Would we like really get into the triumphs of our collections, or talk about Gambit?
I feel like we need to talk about Gambit because I know
Yes.
Gambit's been talked about by several people around the community and whatnot, but the fact that I have lost more hours in Gambit as a non as a I guess here's how I should preface this. I used to be pretty heavy into the Crucible in D1, and even in Rise of Iron, I really enjoyed it. I do really enjoy what I have started to play of the little bits and pieces that exist of Forsaken's Crucible as well. I just don't feel that I've gotten a comfortable amount of equipment yet that I'm solid and okay with like going out and really putting a lot of competitive effort into Crucible. Gambit takes all those issues that I have with Crucible and kind of flips them completely around. Because I can go in with the equipment that I like, that I have so far, and I can still be pretty good with it. Like, I still feel like I'm being somewhat helpful towards my teammates. Now, of course, I know that there are some problems with Gambit, especially with Sleeper Simulant. And so
Oh
on, and I
dear
know that
God.
they did officially talk about that on Twitter. They're investigating how they can make it a little bit more balanced. But long story short, like they're able to kind of tie things back with how Gambit is. This is the PvE PvP mode that I've wanted for a very long time, and I think they did a very good job with it. To me personally, I have put a ton of hours into Gambit, more than anything else. I think Gambit has taken the bulk of my time when I get a chance to actually sit and play Forsaken, or at least when I'm in a fire team. Like if we're not grinding for weapons, like I finally just got my Akelos shotgun.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me!
I got it.
Oh, damn it.
But if it's not getting that, then it's like going out and playing Gambit, because we also know what's behind that system. The armor that's there, the progression that's there, the fact that there are some extra, there are a couple exotics that are there, the fact that you can get some catalysts out of it, just activities opening up a mound of different things, and I feel like Gambit is at a very good like culmination of it all. And from a lore standpoint, it's also a ludicrous activity that Guardians take place in, and how they're taking care of the Gambit and the Drifter as a whole. I think is what also really makes me interested in getting into the activity entirely, because I never felt that way with Shaxx and his Crucible, but with the Drifter and Gambit, I just want more, and they play up that addiction in the lore pretty well, which I kind of like, which is sort of funny.
All right, I gotta say, as a Destiny 2 player, Gambit is the game mode I never knew I wanted. I love this mode. I love this mode. I think people who even dislike Destiny will like Gambit. It's the right balance of fun and challenging. Like, I've always preferred Destiny's PvE over its PvP. So combining the two, I never thought it would work so well. Like the competitiveness to the PvE, trying to kill enemies fast enough, watching how many motes you collect, like you're deciding, okay, should I hold back, help kill enemies, let my teammates get the motes? Should I go in, get the max amount of motes? Should I hold out on my motes to get a bigger blocker? Like the depth and the strategy and the challenge. It's so compelling. Every match of Gambit, like, I have so many little stories about how I was just one mote away from getting a large blocker, and then Invader came out of nowhere, or how I killed Invader just before he killed me. Like, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I'm having so much fun playing Gambit, and like you, I'm losing time in it. I play it, and next thing I know, it's been 3-4 hours. What? I only meant to play a few matches.
Right. I'm gonna say it's literally one of those things where it's like just one more.
Yes.
But it's the right kind of just one more.
Yes. I had no idea I wanted something like this. There's the casual fun nature of slaughtering enemies, which I've always enjoyed from the PvE. I've always enjoyed killing the enemies in Destiny for their designs, their animations, I've said this time and time again, like every Destiny video I've made. Headshots. Headshots in Destiny are some of the best, getting headshots in this game. But adding that extra intensity of having an invader player or you invading someone else, man, gets you on the edge of your seat.
I remember those couple games that like you and I started out with, and being the invader a couple times.
Yeah.
Going over and how much it changed the way that the game played, or how everything played out. All of a sudden, the one team has like 45 motes that they've kept with their characters. We go over bank, I jump through and pop them with a super, and all of a sudden they lose those 45 motes, and it just is like, we're dominating this team now, but they could do the same thing to us real fast. It's just constant. It is a game mode, I guess, of constant tension, because you're fighting against the other team, you're fighting against the clock, you're fighting against the enemies that are coming down, and they're no slouches either. Just everything is working for that game mode, and I feel like it's just about perfect. If they did like a couple extra things to kind of like tweak it, especially with like sleeper, I feel like they would make things perfect. But right now, it is just it is too fun to not want to play. Is how I kind of settle that out. Like it was how Mass Effect 3 was with the way that its horde modes kind of were.
Yeah. It's the game mode you never thought you wanted. Same thing with Mass Effect 3. When I played Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, I didn't know what to expect because previous Mass Effect games, single player only, play Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. Oh my god, this is a blast.
Yep. I gotta say, when I heard multiplayer in Mass Effect, I was like, that is not going to work out very well. And then they said, oh no, it's a horde mode. And I'm like, that's going to work out really well.
Yes.
And that's exactly like what is going on here with Gambit. It's that mix of horde mode and PvP elementation that you have that's going against somebody else, and it just works. It just works.
It's so good.
For me, my first experience with it was when I was over at Guardian Con.
Oh.
Because the guys had actually had a booth that was set up there. They took the same thing, of course, from E3 and took it over to GC right away, just to set it up and have us play with it. And all the people that were complaining were the ones in the line because they wanted to get to the game and play it. And after they had played it, the amount of people where their eyes just lit up, they were having a good time with it. That's what I remember of my time over at GC down in Florida. That was the best thing that I think I had seen from a community level. And the fact that that's now carrying over into live, I'll take it.
Oh, that makes me really happy to hear. I'm really happy for the Destiny community. You guys have been through a lot. You deserve this. You deserve this. Oh man.
I'm gonna say, from some stuff that is, Bungie's fault, to some stuff that is the community's fault, to other stuff that was nobody's fault. Just it was. It's been a ride, but I'm glad that Forsaken is kind of the thing that we definitely needed when it came down to this game, because it changes the overall scope of where I thought Destiny could go, and then some. Like, it just takes everything that I hope for, and it just does it so much better.
Well, I'm really happy to be a part of this. I'm really happy to be along for this journey. I'm really happy to see where this series goes next. Now that it's on PC, of course.
Right.
Oh man. So thank you so much for having me, Beard. This has been a blast. This has been a real good time. I'm really awesome to talk about Destiny with you, with someone who actually knows their stuff.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure to have you around as well here at GT. It has been a wild ride, and I know for you and I, this has been the way that we've been able to connect a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've connected with a couple other content creators besides that have been like, well, I want to get into Destiny, but I just don't understand like what goes into it. I haven't really been a fan of like what's there right now. But seeing that so many are lighting up over the fact that Forsaken is here is just awesome. But I definitely, I like that we got a chance to kind of sit and gush about it, because I know we've kind of done so in our own, our own ways as it is. But every time that we sit down and we get into something that's like an absolute mayhem, we just can't help but gush. So,
I know.
Even though this ran a lot longer than we expected it to.
There's going to be some heavy editing, let me tell you.
I'm gonna say this will be a lot of fun for the edits. But anyway, yeah, thank you for being around here, dude. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again when whatever's next comes up.
Yes.
Really changes the scope of the game. I don't know what that could be next, but we'll have to see.
Or, you could do that Doom video you're supposed to be getting around to sometime, eh?
Look, you. I got plans for some of you suckers that keep asking me about the Doom video. All right, you just sit back and you wait.
Oh, I'm very happy to hear that. So, talk to you later, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. And to Guardians and non-Guardians alike, I'll see you next space time. Take care.
Later.